If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. We have battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40K content every week. Thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by. This video is the last video in our Adeptus Custodes 10 Tips and Tricks series for each detachment. I won't do one for the Null Maiden Vigil. I don't play that one a lot, and there's not a lot of interest. I will come back to it if GW does make some changes to it to make it a bit more viable. Today is one of our highest skilled detachments, the Talons of the Emperor. This detachment is about movement and unit placement, along with one really strong movement stratagem. The tips and tricks for this video are detachment tips, how to build a list, shield host list and talons list, stratagem tips, Taloned Pincer tips and tricks, Psykana Rhino, stay within 6 inches, CP management, enhancement tips, and last, top units. We'll start with some detachment rule tips. The detachment rule for Talons of the Emperor is Revered Companions, and it gives 2 different buffs. The first one is Null Aegis, where any of our Psykana units that are within 6 inches of another Adeptus Custodes unit, that unit gets a 5-up funeral pain to mortals and psychic damage. The second part is Deadly Unity. Anytime we have a non-Psykana unit within 6 inches of a Psykana unit, that Psykana unit gets +1 to the hit roll. In this detachment rule, Revered Companions, the Null Aegis is the best overall protection from mortal wounds in all of our 5 detachments. Shield Host does have Arcane Genetic Alchemy, but it is only for 1 unit. Arcane Genetic Alchemy is a 4+, this is only a 5+, but it can be spread throughout our entire army. The thing to remember is we need Psykana units in the list, and most important, be within 6 inches. Being within 6 inches will open up the full power of the Talons of the Emperor. The second part of the detachment rule, Deadly Unity, is not something we really consider when playing the detachment. Unless we bring a Vigilator heavy list, the +1 to hit will not really help the Witseekers since they use torrent weapons, and the Prosecutors, they could use it, but for the most part, we do not build the list to increase our Psykana damage. Psykana units are for spreading Null Aegis and getting secondary points. Next up is how to build a list. This is a general guide to building a list. I have some more in-depth guides to building an army and a list for each detachment. Hopefully those will be out in the next few weeks. Like most if not all of our detachments, we can't go wrong with a unit or 2 of wardens. You want a similar list construction as the shield host, units to hold objectives, units to put pressure on the enemy, aka the attack units, then some units for some secondary scoring. The difference in Talons of the Emperor is that we will have a few more Psykana units. We do not need to bring a bunch of units. 4 to 5 is the sweet spot. So speaking of the shield host, the Talons of the Emperor and the shield host detachment use very similar lists. If you play shield host and are curious about Talons of the Emperor, you can literally bring your exact same list. It won't be quite as built for the Talons of the Emperor, but it is still very similar enough that you can get a true feel for the detachment. Solar Spearhead, we need a lot more dreads. Null Maiden Vigil, you need a lot of Psykana units, and Auric is more of a character-heavy detachment. But you literally can just take your shield host list and play it in the Talons of the Emperor, and you can still have a good time. Next up, we have a few stratagem tips and tricks for the Talons of the Emperor. Our first stratagem is Emperor's Executioners for 2 CP. This is the only melee damage stratagem in the detachment. +1 to the wound is one of the best damage buffs in 40k. 2 CP is expensive, with a lot of other good stratagems to consider. If it is an important combat, the 2 CP is probably worth it. On a chaff unit or a unit we may kill even without the +1 to the wound, save the 2 CP. Talons Interlocked for 1 CP. This is one of the stratagems I would not waste the CP on. The reason for this is infantry only, and a lot of the times you just aren't going to have a big brick of infantry that's worth using this CP on. If we really need to take out a unit with some ranged attacks to swing the game, the 1 CP is worth it. Other than that, unless you're running Draxus with some Custodian Guard or a big brick of Alaris Terminators, I would save the CP. And last up is Shield of Honor for 1 CP. This can only be used in the shooting phase, and it causes the enemy to have to target a Custodes infantry unit. The enemy needs to be able to target the Custodes infantry unit though. We can't choose a unit that is out of line of sight of that enemy unit who targeted the Psykana unit. Keep those restrictions in mind when setting a play up when using this stratagem. Then we have the stratagem Taloned Pincer, and I wanted to talk about this stratagem just by itself, because this is the best stratagem in the detachment. It helps with one of the weaknesses of Custodes infantry, movement. It can only be used on one unit, and the opponent will try to bait this stratagem out of us. Before the opponent moves, try to have a unit in mind that you want to save Taloned Pincer for. Use it to possibly move out of line of sight, or even steal an objective to pull ahead on the points in our turn. This stratagem opens up a world of possibilities. This is a flat 6-inch normal move, not just a d6, but a flat 6 inches. This allows us to make charges 6 inches longer, or even move totally out of line of sight. We can also move units of Wardens 6 inches to charge block with our 4+ Funeral Pain. Another thing we could do, since this is a normal move, we can move a Psykana unit through a Custodes unit to charge block with that Psykana unit. We can even use it to steal objectives or move off an objective if that unit will be the target of a lot of those. If this unit is on objective, do something attacks. If you're standing on objectives, you get to reroll the wound roll or the hit roll or something like that. If you are being the risk of being attacked by one of those units, you can use that 6-inch move to move off that objective. Another fun trick is, since Taloned Pincer is a normal move, we can use the Virtus Praetor's Quicksilver Execution ability after we do that 6-inch normal move if the Virtus Praetors moved over an enemy unit. Remember, this only needs to move over the unit, not across the unit. We can just fly over the tip of an enemy model's base to bomb that whole unit. And Quicksilver Execution is once per battle. After this unit ends a normal move or advanced move, you can select one enemy unit, excluding monster or vehicle units, that it had moved over during that move, and then roll 1d6 for each model in this unit. That's the Virtus Praetor's unit. For each 2+, that enemy unit suffers 2 mortal wounds. As you can see, there is a lot of different things you can do with Taloned Pincer, and that is what makes it the best stratagem in the detachment. Next up is our Psykana Rhino. This is a quick tip, but a useful one. The Rhino does not have a base, which means when making measurements, it is from the hull. The 5+ Funeral Pain Null Aegis ability is a 6-inch aura. The Psykana Rhino has the Psykana keyword, so anywhere within 6 inches of the Rhino's hull, anywhere within 6 inches of the Rhino's hull is within the Null Aegis aura. They are tougher than sisters. We can plant them in some more dangerous areas to spread that 6-inch 5+ Funeral Pain to mortals and psychic. Stay within 6 inches. Stay within 6 inches. I know it is simple, but when playing this detachment, it is good to make a habit of taking the time to make sure we are actually within 6 inches of a Psykana model. I know it's not possible to be within 6 inches all the time, but if the enemy has some mortal wounds threat, make sure you are actually within 6 inches during your movement. Even more so when the enemy has mortal wounds overwatch threat, be sure to be within 6 inches of your Psykana units, especially if you've brought them in your list. You don't want to bring them in your list and not use that detachment rule. Stay within 6 inches. Talons of the Emperor has a problem: too many good stratagems. This can cause the detachment to feel CP hungry. It is also what makes CP management so important. When I play Talons of the Emperor, CP reroll should be only used when we stand to gain a lot of points or swing the game. I may want to save a model by rerolling a failed 4+, but not if it means I no longer have the CP for Hunt as 1, our fallback and charge, or Taloned Pincer, which is our reactive movement. I always want to make sure I have CP for those before I have CP for CP reroll. Then we have stratagems like Empiric Severance for a 4+ Funeral Pain to mortals, which could potentially save more damage than a CP reroll. We also have a +1 to wound stratagem, which is a great damage increase. Emperor's Executioners is 2 CP though. A big cost if we're throwing away CP on CP rerolls and other stratagems we don't really need to use. We want to save CP for our strong stratagems. Tip for learning how to manage a detachment CP, as well as test how much CP you may need over the course of a game. And that tip is to play a casual game and do not use CP reroll for the whole game. And try to take note of how many times that CP reroll would have really made a difference, or having that extra CP for these Talons of the Emperor stratagems makes a difference. It also helps us in future games in which we need to decide if we want to use CP reroll or just hold it for other stratagems. Next, I want to take a look at the 4 enhancements and some tips for those enhancements. For our bottom tier, we do have Champion of the Imperium, and this adds 3 inches to the aura of Null Aegis, or the Deadly Unity, and currently at 25 points, it's just not worth it when there's much better enhancements, and 2 of these better enhancements are also cheaper than this enhancement. Maybe if it was 5 points, it would be a good filler enhancement, but for 25 points, that's a bit too steep. For our top tier, we do have 3 enhancements in this tier. The first one is Gift of the Terran Artifice, and this adds a flat +1 to the wound roll in melee. I like this enhancement on a Blade Champion. He has an AP3 weapon with +1 to the wound. It gets more wounds through for that big AP3 and damage 3. The next enhancement is Radiant Mantle. -1 to the hit roll of incoming attacks if they are within 12 inches of the bearer's unit. This is the best enhancement when playing against a melee heavy list or a melee meta. Last, we have Aegis Projector, and this is my favorite enhancement. Radiant Mantle has it beat against melee lists. Against a shooting heavy list though, I prefer this enhancement. It turns the damage from the first failed save to 0. It turns the first failed save to 0 damage, and that's an our turn and the player's turn, not every battle round. So this is quite powerful. And this is for the bearer's unit as well. Even if it is only 1 damage save a turn, that is 10 damage over the course of the game. Next, I want to talk about some top units for the Talons of the Emperor. The first one we have is the Blade Champion with the Wardens, a staple in all of our detachments. These are the toughest unit we have access to. In a game where we need to hold objectives to win, you want tough units in your list. The Blade Champion gives the unit advance in charge once per game, and in all game, re-roll the charge roll. The Wardens have their once per game 4+ feel no pain and -1 to the wound roll if the incoming attack's strength is higher than the Warden's toughness 6. These being our objective holders will be the ones who take advantage of the Taloned Pincer stratagem the most. The Wardens do not have re-roll the wound roll. Emperor's Executioners for +1 to the wound roll in melee makes them much more reliable in combat. Then we have the Shield Captain on the Dawn Eagle jet bike with the Virtus Praetors. These Virtus Praetors have made a major comeback. They are now being used in every detachment. Stephen Box recently won a GT with 8 jet bikes in a shield host list. They shoot hard and they hit hard now. Talon Pincer once again is fantastic. Hunter's 1 is also great for the Virtus Praetors melee weapons since they have the Lance ability. This gives them a fallback shoot and charge so you can charge back in and get that +1 to the wound roll. I wanted to put a Psykana unit here, and I chose the Witch Seekers, and these are my favorite Psykana units. They have 3 abilities that actually come in handy. Daughters of the Abyss for a 3+ feel no pain to mortals and psychic. They hand out a battle shock test for 1 enemy unit hit by their ranged torrent weapon. Finally, my favorite, a 6-inch scout move. Many of our stratagems in Talons of the Emperor can be used on 2 units as long as one of the units is a Psykana unit and one of them is a non-Psykana unit. Talon Pincer is fantastic for this, so you can pick a Warden's unit, and if you have a Witch Seeker unit within 6 inches, you can react and move both those units. That 6-inch scout is great for early board control and setting up a 6-inch web of Null Aegis aura. I threw in a few bonus units here. The Caladius Grab Tank, the best anti-tank unit we have. Draxus with Custodian Guard, and Talons and Jalot can give them an extra AP1 and Strength 1 on their ranged attacks. The Alaris Custodians, a lot of great stratagems for the Alaris, +1 to the wound and react with 6-inch move is great on these. Valerian with some Wardens into melee lists, this unit is awful to try to kill. -1 AP to all incoming melee attacks. Those are my bonus units and my 10 tips and tricks for the Talons of the Emperor detachment. Let's finish the video with some final thoughts. I hope these tips and tricks help those who are playing or thinking of playing a Talons of the Emperor list. Talons is a bit more high skilled than Shield Host, but it is still a lot of fun. The reactive 6-inch move is such a joy to use. Moving these 6 inches away to where charges fail and then in our turn charge in and blend up that unit, it feels nice to have a movement trick in this detachment. Don't forget about your Psykana units. Your list does not need to be full of them, but it should have enough units to spread around our detachment rule. Subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40K content. And like always, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.